pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to welcome everyone to our July 15th meeting. Please note the council's here in full attendance. We do have, before we move into items from council, a couple of things staff would like to bring up. Our police chief, there he is, Chief Craig. You had something for us that you'd like to share. No, don't throw them.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. I'd just like to acknowledge and applaud some of the work that's being done in the organization. And recently, two of our officers got back from the Texas Crime Prevention Association, and we were recognized in two different categories. And the officers that received these awards are here tonight, and I just wanted to recognize them publicly with you. The first one is the Victoria Police Department received Outstanding Crime Prevention Agency, small agency, which is a population under 100,000, and that was awarded to the Victoria Police Department, most specifically to our crime prevention unit, which are doing a heck of a job out there in terms of public education. So I'd like to call up Sergeant Chris Guerra for that, and also we received one of our officers in particular, and by the way, that's the second time in 3 years that I'm not so sure I like having them behind me. Last time I was around, they threw water on me. This is actually the second time in 3 years that we received the Outstanding Crime Prevention Agency award, so I'm very proud of that. And I'd also like to call up Officer John Turner, who actually was the perpetrator of throwing the cold water at me. And he received the Outstanding Crime Prevention Specialist Award bestowed upon Officer John Turner, Victoria Police Department of this year. And Chris won this award a couple years ago. So I'm really proud of their efforts, certainly proud of the job that crime prevention is doing out in the community. So I just wanted to take a couple moments and acknowledge them in front of you and publicly for the job that they're doing. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I won't let them talk.
Hey, Chief, real quick, just for the public that may not be on Facebook or YouTube, these are primarily a result of the really clever videos that have been created, right?
Yes, I'd like to take
big
credit
part
for
of
that, but I had it wasn't my idea.
And they are really good, and
Yes, they are.
the throw, obviously, when water was thrown in you, that was part of a very interesting video. It's nice to
Yes.
see the humor added in to help people. It relates to that demographic very well, the younger folks that need reminders about locking their car, or whatever the lesson is. So it's
Correct.
excellent. I love
Thank you
it.
very much.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, real quick, and I believe Councilman Halapaska had planned to ask this, but I'll just, right now, can we have an update on the water restrictions? I know today we're entering stage 2, I believe.
Yes, good evening. We did go into stage 2 of our drought contingency plan yesterday. The river level, by permit, if the river level falls below 300 CFS at Victoria during the months of July and August, then we have to enact stage 2. We have to quit taking water off on that permit. That occurred Friday evening, and since then it has not risen above the 300 CFS. I looked right before I came down here. It was 229 CFS. So we are in stage 2. Of course, that requires or limits the hours during which certain non-essential water uses can be used. Things like irrigating landscaping can only be done between the hours of 6 and 10 a.m. and 8 p.m. and midnight using a hose-end sprinkler or a irrigation system. Of course, you can hand water if you have a positive shut-off nozzle on the end of your hose and you stand out there and hold it. You can do that anytime. Also, washing vehicles. If you're not at a car wash, you're just doing it at your home, the hours are limited to 6 and 10 a.m. and then 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. and we will remain in stage 2 until we either get some rain, the river level comes up, and we come out of it, or the drought continues and we fall into a deeper stage at some point here.
We were in stage 2 much earlier last year. March,
Yes, and
April.
we thought we were going to come into it this year very early, but we've had a few little rains that have kind of stalled that for a while, but we finally caught up to us. So,
Very good.
thank you.
Thank you.
As a general statement, went to Corpus to attend that desalination hearings before the state lawmakers, and they pointed out that long-term water is not weather-related. You must find new sources and new storage for your water. That'd be a long-term view of it. Thank you.
Okay, well, with that, we'll just, items from council. Anyone have anything to bring up? Nothing to pull from, let's see, we do have a consent agenda with just a few items. Okay, seeing none, we'll close council communications and open citizens communication. So if anyone would like to come up to speak about anything at all. We do just have the time limit, so please keep your comments to 5 minutes if possible, and give us your name and address.
You might want me to go longer when you hear what I talk about. My name is Mark Lofgren. I live at 116 Wilshire, Castle Hills West. I've lived in Victoria, the city of Victoria, and the county of Victoria for 28 years. And I want to stress that I've lived in the county for 28 years. I know you get and I want to tell you all I appreciate what you do. The staff, I may not agree with everything you do, but I do appreciate everything. You've got a difficult job. What I want to talk about is, and I had suggested that you guys look at other revenue, and I'm not going to talk about that. What I'm going to talk about is I look at my tax bill and I see other things on it. And this is not a city issue, this is a county issue, but the citizens of Victoria need to realize it, and a lot of them don't. On your tax bill, there's a thing for road and bridges. And road and bridges is imposed by the county. The county does not spend any money inside the city limits for roads and bridges. Not last Monday, but the Monday before, I went before the Commissioner's Court and I said, listen, you know, this isn't fair. I'm spending tax money. And 4 out of 5 people now, it's almost 4 out of 5 people, live in the city of Victoria. So they're paying taxes for the 1 out of 5 people that don't live in the city limits. I said a fairer thing would be as if there was a district for the city and a district for outside the city. Of course, the people outside the city would have to pay 4 or 5 times for their roads, but the people inside the city shouldn't have to pay if you're not going to spend any money in the city. They told me it was a state issue. That's the way it's divided up. If I needed to fix it, I had to go to Jeannie Morrison's office. I went to Jeannie Morrison's office. They're going to get back to me. I started investigating on my own. There are certain transportation laws that are on the books, and it's a huge thing for the county. And a lot of those laws, there's no consequences if they don't obey them. And one of them is that they're supposed to do a report on all the roads in the county. And by the county, I mean every road in every city in the county, they're supposed to do a report. There's no consequences if they don't do the report. They have not done a report until last year because the state decided, since all the oil trucks have torn up the road, that they came up with some money. And for them to get the money, they had to do a report. I asked them, when you did the report, did it have city streets in it? No. Well, I looked up the laws, and there's a section called 251 let me get it correct. .012, which says the county has the authority, with the approval of a municipality, to finance streets inside a city. So I brought that to their attention. I said, you know, it's not exactly fair here. The judge met with me. He said, I'll meet with you afterwards. And he goes, well, you pay for schools. Do you have people in schools? I said, no, I don't. But I said, that's not exactly the same. He goes, well, you drive on county roads, don't you? I said, come on, Judge. The county people drive on city roads more than I ever drive. I said, the only time I drive on a county road is to see when the city's going to annex something. I go out to see what they're going to annex. The second meeting, I brought all this up, and I said, listen, you need to do something about it. It shouldn't be that I have to go to the thing. I said, you owe it to the people, the citizens of Victoria are paying this tax. It's like 5 people bought a ham. They sit in the room. One person gets to eat it all, and the other 4 people get nothing. It's not fair. I would suggest that all the citizens of Victoria call their county commissioners and say they want the roads fixed. They have the ability to do it. Now, quickly I'll say, the county roads are in as bad shape as the city roads. And when they do a county road, they don't do half the job because there's less traffic. Those roads are not the same as city roads. This system was set up way, way back when the counties were rural, okay? But it's antiquated. It needs to be fixed. It's not fair to us. There are other counties where the counties do help the cities out, because I just talked to somebody in Orange County, the county judge there. So, citizens, please call your county commissioners and put some heat on them. Thank you very much.
Citizens communication still open. If anyone else would like to speak. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close citizens communications and move into our consent agenda.
There are 3 items on the consent agenda tonight that will be approved by a single vote. They are first, the approval of minutes of the regular meeting of July 1st, 2014. Second, a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute all documents necessary to convey 1010 Park Avenue to David and Mary Alice Mesa of Victoria, Texas, in exchange for $4,000 and declaring an effective date. And the third is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute all documents necessary to convey 810B Virginia Avenue to Mario Sanchez Luna and Mia Epifania Sanchez of Bloomington, Texas, in exchange for $4,240 and declaring an effective date.
Council?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, those all pass, and we'll go into resolutions.
Item E1 is a resolution granting a variance to Section 21-82A1 of the Victoria City Code related to subdivisions and developments, which requires a minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet for a single-family residential lot for properties located at 2802 and 2804 Algie Street, owned by Raquel Rodriguez, and declaring an effective date.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on E1? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So that passes.
Item E2 is a resolution granting a variance to Section 21-54B2 of the Victoria City Code related to subdivisions and developments, which requires a right-of-way dedication for lots fronting on a secondary arterial street for Frells Subdivision Number 1, Re-Subdivision Number 1, owned by James Wayne, and declaring an effective date.
Make a motion to accept variance as stated in E2.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, E3.
Item E3 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract amendment to the grant agreement with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality for air quality planning and declaring an effective date.
Move we adopt?
Second.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion? Pretty straightforward, I know. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, E4.
E4 is a resolution adopting a program for the support of outside agencies through hotel occupancy tax funds and declaring an effective date. And Mayor, I hate to be the one to break the rhythm that we're on, but I do need some further direction before we can make a motion on this particular agenda. There are 3 separate things that I'd really like to get direction from council on. The first is the dollar figure to go in the blank. I've passed out to each of you a copy of the finance director's report on the funding that is available in the hotel occupancy tax fund. And Gilbert, please step in and correct me if I make any mistakes as I kind of punch through the major numbers on here. And Gilbert has said he's certainly available for any questions you have. The total fund balance projected to be available,
This page with the yellow on the bottom.
yes,
Yeah.
projected to be available on October 1st is $772,933. The total revenues expected are $1.6 million, give or take, meaning that there's total funds available in that fund of $2.444 million, and expected expenditures of $1.5 million. If I'm following along correctly, that means the available funds for other programs, including this, is $558,865. Please remember, council members, that there is a hard cap on the amount of money that can be spent for arts programs, and that cap is 15% of the available funding, and that dollar figure is $366,740. Remember that every year we get applications from entities requesting funding that is not specifically tied to arts. And so you're certainly not restricted to that dollar figure as being the total amount that you can dedicate to the program. But if you do dedicate more than $366,740, I'll simply keep track of which dollars are going towards arts programs in order to ensure that we don't recommend to you, that the committee doesn't recommend to you, any dollar figure that would exceed that amount. Did I do okay on that, Gilbert?
Yes,
Thank you.
not bad for an attorney.
So the first
I'm not hired.
direction that I need,
He took a little shot at you.
quite all right.
We'll see how the CPA does here in a minute.
We'll ask him the word questions later.
I'll make
The-
it work.
He does numbers, I do words. We've got this agreement. All right. So the first figure that I need, the first answer I need is what dollar figure council wants to dedicate to this program.
Can I interject something, Thomas, real quick?
Please do.
Assuming, this is the handout, the one I
Absolutely, yes.
I just want to make sure, open record type of thing. I'm recommending set aside $339,000 as reserve. How I came up with that number is from the operation of the city. Basically, that's how that number's developed. It's 3 months operations. Council, you have discretion to say no, you want the whole money to go. That's fine, but my recommendation, at least have 3 months of operating expenses that are related to city operation. For example, personnel services, professional services, it transfers to the operations. Those are the ones. So I just want to make sure that you do have discretion to move money around if you like, but my recommendation is to at least set 3 months of that aside, which is that number of 339.
Okay. If I may, and I know council should have questions, I would imagine. The motel tax receipts, revenues, what kind of change is that from last year? I don't
Well,
know.
the original budget from last year, it was set at $1.8 million.
0.8?
1.8. The trend, I'm looking about $1.7 million this year. It was around 15, it dropped to 11%. Now it's a little less than 11% in collection, but it's getting a little better than I thought.
Have you?
But
you
we're not going to hit the 1.8, that's my,
You collect at the end of each quarter?
after it's done, yes.
Okay, so you've collected
So
3
for-
quarters.
I've collected up to June.
We collect monthly, though, from
Well, I collect
hotel
monthly,
euros.
yes.
Oh,
That-
it used to be quarterly.
We did.
They used to be
change
quarterly.
that.
I'm sorry, I
Yes,
misunderstood
sir.
what you said.
Okay.
It's a monthly collection.
So-
But there's a lapse when they send it in, of course.
For this current year, how are you looking on coming in on your 1.8? Just curious.
He's projecting 1.67.
Yeah.
No, 1.67 is for
Oh,
next year.
1.65.
Oh, you're
Yeah,
gonna,
so it's really that, I'm not expecting a lot of increase from this year to next year.
okay, wait a minute, let's back up.
What I'm
did you
expecting for
budget last year?
2014 is about 1.65,
Okay, you budgeted 1.8?
1.8.
That's what,
He's
Now-
flat from actual. What
That's
he
correct.
thinks
It's basically
actual
flat from this
budgeted
year.
For 15.
Now, one thing in mind is that we might get around 1.7 if the trend continues the way it is, but,
okay.
I still think we're pretty close.
You did good, I'm not.
No,
yeah,
it's fine. I
That's a
understand.
hard one to project. And you had a lot of change in that industry, a lot of more new rooms, and I know a lot of people may not understand why it's dropped, but it's not that the occupancy is dropped necessarily, it's just that the percent of the rate.
That's
Since
correct. A
rooms are
lot of the rates
cheaper.
have dropped, too.
Okay. I know this group understands it, I think we've talked about it, but I'm just mentioning that out.
Now, one question that we've been asked is if you just take 15% off the expected revenues for next year, and that would be $250,000. So, which is not the max, but if you just want to look at what you expect your revenues to be.
So that 1,672,000, 15% of that
It's
is
a little
the
over
two,
250.
right around 250. Okay. And you are taking, to get you your 366, 15% of the 2.444, or 2.45 million.
By law, yes. That's the max.
That's the 366 is the max. Eligible just for the arts part.
You can do anything less than that.
And that is your recommendation.
My recommendation is your recommendation.
Well, it accomplishes what you wanted to accomplish with the 3 months operations and everything.
Well, seriously, my recommendation is that not above the, related to arts program.
Yeah.
The 366 is your magical number.
I understand. If we add any more, yeah, okay. Council, y'all surely have questions or?
Oh, I see some numbers in here. The CVB is asking for a $120,000 increase.
Yes, sir, we've not brought that to you yet. We'll bring it to you on the 19th. It's a mobile visitor center concept, so we've added that in. So if you approve it, then you don't have to redo your numbers. If you don't approve it, you can take 15% of that 120.
So you have tournament programs, one for $17,200. Tournament umpires for $25,920. Those are new.
Those are new.
Those are new,
Right.
that the Parks is working on.
2-day tournaments or more.
The other numbers that have been there, for example, personnel, professional services.
Pretty consistent. Yes, sir.
Everything else is consistent. So you're plugging in about over $100,000 in new expenditures
Yes, sir.
that impacts this.
And you do make the point, it's still the council discretion as to what you want in there or not in there. That's your discretion yet. This is just a recommendation from city
What
manager.
was the number last year for the hot funds for the grants?
Outside agencies?
Yes,
Excluding the Main Street program?
yes.
I would say 552, 555, okay?
45?
The total amount that was, I think you're right about the total amount that was recommended by council, and then the committee recommended less than that, and the total amount awarded was 545, 557, 545,557. I have a worksheet, council, if you're interested in seeing what was awarded in past years or what was requested this year. I have that here if anybody wants to see it.
I think we should pass out copies.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was the number again, the hard number?
545, 557. How far back are you going on that chart? Just the last 2 years?
To 2010.
Oh, okay.
Total's not for all, well, yeah, it is. Sure is on.
This is a rough draft. I'll let council members know, this is a rough draft of a spreadsheet that I use when I sit down with the committee. You'll see that it automatically calculates for me the amount of money in the arts category, in the history category, in the sports category, et cetera. That is so that if I have to keep track of how much money I've awarded in each of those categories, it calculates a running total for me. Don't put a whole lot of weight in those numbers yet. As I go through the applications more carefully, sometimes those numbers shift up or down. This rough draft was prepared based on the initial review of those applications. And so I know that as I've gotten with close evaluation of the first third of those, some of those numbers have just shifted already, and they probably will continue to shift.
So the total arts alone is requested 647.
That's right. The amount requested exceeds the amount that you can legally devote to the fund.
yeah.
There's no way to make everybody happy.
Yeah. That's an understatement. The committee has not met, but they will.
The
meet.
committee's scheduled to meet tomorrow afternoon.
And there are 5 members?
7 members of the
7,
committee.
yeah, we did expand that. I couldn't remember, and 2 hoteliers on that?
2 hoteliers on the
Okay,
committee.
the other are arts and sports and
That's right.
represented, okay. 7 members.
Thomas, that's 545, 557.
Yes,
Now, all of that money has not been reimbursed to the organizations.
that's correct.
Correct.
That's correct. The way the process works is that when the organization completes their event, or whatever it is that they've applied for, they submit a post-event report. That report is then reviewed by me for legality. It's reviewed by Gilbert for the invoices itself. And only after it meets with all those approvals are the funds actually paid back to the applicant. So we pay in arrears, and I know that not all of those have been approved yet. Not all of them have been submitted yet.
Gilbert, do you think we'll reach that number? That 545? That paying out all that money?
Well, if they hurry up and submit their invoices, yeah. But
The deadline?
Well, I got to have a report. The expense has to occur within this course of fiscal year, but I need to report by September. But sometimes we let it lapse to past September by at least a few days. But we need those reports in. I haven't had any problems in the past in them submitting their reports on time anyway.
Right.
Did you have 100% reimbursement?
If you want to compare prior years, they go after the money that they're asking for, yes.
And Emmett, I can follow along with that by saying on about August the 1st, my office intends to send out a letter to all of the applicants who have not yet completed the process to say, please get it finished by September 1st. That gives us an additional month after they submit things to go through the approval process before the end of the fiscal year. I would like to see all applicants through the process before the end of the fiscal year, although that doesn't always happen.
You're pretty close to closing the books by...
Yeah, I was going to add to that. I know the mainstream program's not part of the whole scenario we're talking about, but they usually come back before council and ask for approval to carry that over.
Sure.
And I expect that to happen in the near future.
Right. Well, again, just want to emphasize in Exhibit A, one of the last paragraphs, about that the recipients are required to submit a post-event report which documents the expenditure of hot funds and which verifies the direct promotion of tourism in the hotel and convention industry. So that's kind of the safeguards that we have in place
Yes, sir.
before we execute any reimbursements.
Yes, sir.
That's correct.
Good. Sorry, I was a little off topic. Give us a little time to figure out the amount, I suppose.
You know, it's interesting, just the public doesn't have this historical numbers in front of them. We do. Just a few years ago in 2010, that total was $88,000. And here we are, last year was 545. So it's, you know, the fact that the number we will probably settle with this year will be lower, but if you look at it from the last 5 years, it's still a considerable impact.
Let me
I
point
just,
one
you know,
thing out,
that's
Mayor,
for
if
the
I could. One of the main reasons why it's declined is not because the hotel tax revenue is based, because, you know, we budgeted 1.8. I think we might come in around 1.7. But as you recall, in prior years, we held money back for a building structure for a downtown, so it hasn't been occurring, so we've been using that as a carryover, and using it, so. And one of my recommendations moving forward to 2015 is that maybe we need to reconsider that for the 2015, just put that money just available, period, and then let current council decide how they want to handle that through the budget process. As you recall, we assigned so much for this future CB building, and my recommendation is let's deallocate it, put it as unreserved, it's available for everything, and then council decides how you want to handle that money in the coming future. My recommendation is leave it available, period, and then y'all decide as you go and tap into it.
See, that's been my argument. If you would subtract the 772 out of the 2.4 million and then multiply by the 15%, you'd get a totally different number.
The
It would be
250.
250.
Yeah, that's the number Mr. Gary was talking about.
2,800. If you just purely-
And that's discretion of council.
If you want to
Not
be
to include
very
the fund
conservative.
balance in the calculations. Is that what you're stating? Okay.
You're using that fund balance every year.
Removing
Then
the
one
fund
day, if
balance
you
before
take
you
it
do the
out,
calculation.
that number's going to drop by
Yes.
that much, and then you won't be able to multiply your percentages accordingly.
It would probably be a good idea, I mean, not probably, but I think it's a good idea to try to minimize volatility the best we can, you know, and to go from 545 to 250. It's not really minimizing volatility. I don't have a problem keeping that in there. using the 15% of the 2.45 million is what I'm saying. What are y'all's thoughts? I mean, in other words, I could see going with this recommendation that's been handed to us.
Can I interject something?
Yes, please do.
With your comment, Mayor, is that I concur with it. It's for 1 year. For the 2015, I don't see an issue with it, but in future years, you might want to change that viewpoint, that you might want to start looking at your trends of revenue really, not because what you're doing is eating up your reserve, basically, and that's fine. The industry markets will be changing. As you recall, when we first started, we had a lot of influx of hotels, and we had no idea where those rates and how many rooms and what will actually be rented out. So you can see that bell curve is still working itself, and you're going to see finally it's going to plateau somewhere. At that time, then you can create your own policy as to what do you want to do. But in the future, you might want to relook at that policy about using the 15% on the gross from that point on until you have a good trend. Because what you're going to see right now, you have so many hotels coming online, but at the same time, you're going to see some hotels maneuvering, switching, and maybe closing, and whatever the case might be. Because as you recall, there was a lot of influx in industry and the economy, and the Ford Shell and everything else. So there was a huge influx in hotel buildings. I think you deserve yourself right if in the future you might want to curtail your limitation. For 15 is fine, but in the future you might want to take a different avenue. Just it's an opinion.
And I completely agree. I think we're in agreement. If we, for example, could 5 more years from now have a situation where we might avoid swings greater than 20%, but I mean, by having a fund balance that occasionally that council in the future can draw from slightly in order to, because I don't really want to impact these particular events so drastically year to year. They're good events for the most part. Everybody's got their favorite events, and so in the end, using the 15% of the 2.4 or 5, I have no problem with it. We, of course, can add more, but...
One just like correction. Staff's not recommending 366,740. We're just telling you that's the maximum that's allowed.
For the arts.
For the arts.
That's up to you guys on.
But I'm suggesting the 558K is what's available for the overall.
Right. I mean, we could.
300.
I understand. We could add to that for the non-arts, which everybody has that spreadsheet in front of them, and there are history and sports to cover those items. I understand, and I didn't mean to misrepresent that.
But I think historically, and y'all, Thomas and Gilbert, haven't we just come up with a figure and we've lumped them all under that figure? We've
That's
not
exactly right.
separated them out.
We have not separated them.
That's
We do
exactly
it
right.
after the fact when they submit their application.
Right. And then the committee has simply made sure that the total amount dedicated to the arts doesn't exceed the legal max.
Yeah.
So
But it's only one number is all that council has typically done in the past.
For everything.
This council could pull 34,000 out extra from the fund balance, add it to the 366 and allocate 400. Of course,
Right.
that extra 36 would go strictly for sports or history.
That's
things like
correct.
that.
That's right.
That's why I made that quality,
Right.
I'm just suggesting
Right.
to set that aside. You can do what you want with it.
And likewise, the committee would take that as having discretion to spend more than the $40,000 on the history and sports and other, so long as they didn't exceed the 400 total. That is to say, they don't have to spend the total of 366 on arts. It's just a total grant of 400 to be divided up as
Understood.
they see fit,
I understand, yeah.
unless you tell me otherwise.
Now, we don't have to have a number tonight.
I think we need a number tonight because the committee meets tomorrow and they need to know how much money they have to give out.
Okay. We do then.
If council does not want to come up with a number tonight, we will simply postpone the process starting until council meets again, and you can present to me a number at the next council meeting. We can revisit this issue at that time. What that does to the calendar is it means that it's unlikely that the committee could make its recommendation, get it back to you in time for you to make a final decision and still get it in the budget before the budget is approved. We would simply do this by a budget amendment. We've done that in the past. We've tried to get away from that, though, and align it with the budget. So if you don't want to come up with a number tonight, that's quite all right, but that's the impact that it'll have.
I'd prefer
Yep.
we do so tonight, and let's lay it down.
And just to add on to Mr. Gush's comment, which I concur, is that in the past, we didn't give them a number. They came in with the application, and that all that information was brought back to council. Then at that night, you individually have to make a choice to make it fit the puzzle. And what he's doing is trying to avoid all that
Unpleasant.
work.
Sorry, we're all using our calculators up here, so I apologize.
Some of you are using pencils, that's good. Some people can still do math.
You know, for me, if I may, and I add this just for, discussion, I mean, if you look at that undesignated fund balance, if we want to maybe have a number in mind to leave in there, let's say you were comfortable just going to 720 in the undesignated fund balance, of course, that would sweep off that 52,000 and add it to the 366. That's kind of how I was thinking, looking at it. I don't know what you...
Well, and I'm slightly confused, because if 366, 740 is the maximum, how can we go above that?
Well, the arts and history, you can use the excess for that.
The history and sports and
Excuse
other.
me.
Anything other
History
than
and
arts.
sports.
Yeah.
Maybe I should be quiet. But, I mean, you could say we want to have an undesignated ending balance of 700,000 and put the other 72 in there. It's still going to be less than last year. It's just, it is what it is, so.
I was kind of approaching it from a different perspective. It comes out exactly the same, just about as what you're saying, Mayor, is taking that undesignated fund balance, dividing it by 2, where you put away half of it, and you come up with the numbers. The total funds available would be 2.058 million. Julia, subtraction gives the ending fund balance available for other hot fund programs of 511,399. I think it leaves 725,000 in the proposed or in the fund balance. And then hot funds would be 308,770 max allowed for arts.
Okay, so
It would
15,
be you're recommending 308,770 as the number on this resolution to be devoted to this program.
to the arts.
Yeah. What I was
Well,
looking
all-
at was
all of it.
To all of
keeping that fund balance at, like you were saying, about 725,000.
Oh, it's 772, actually.
Mine's going to go to 897.
But down at the bottom.
Oh, forgive me, okay. Well, your number would be higher.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because our fund balance right now is 897,
Oh,
865.
yes, it would go up a little bit. I'm sorry.
Okay, so we take 897 minus 772, and you're going to make that available? I guess not, huh?
No.
I can make a suggestion. Were you trying to increase the amount of money available to the overall program itself? I'm trying to understand.
No, I'm
No,
not.
he's trying
Okay.
to reduce.
Reduce it.
I was, because
Okay.
the way I was looking at it is, I was thinking some of that fund balance didn't need to be included in that, or taking away for the hot funds program. So I was trying to leave more into that reserve.
Okay, because that's 3 months of just city operation itself. I'm very comfortable with that 3 months, just related to city operation. And I just thought maybe you wanted, I misunderstood. I thought you were going the other way, give more money out.
No.
Okay. But it's your call.
So is your recommendation, Mr. Bucknight, that the council devote $308,000 to the program as a whole?
If I did my math right, let me see.
Yeah, I need to do the same thing.
Rounded to 310.
Round it to 310?
Are you just talking about the arts program, or are you talking about the whole thing?
The number that I need for the resolution is the whole thing.
The whole thing?
The whole
so-
thing.
It's got to be in the 500,000 range.
All right, let me do my math again.
We can just throw out some numbers and whittle it down, because you can calculate this to death. And I'm going to make a motion that we set the amount at 550,000. Even it out.
An increase from last year?
That's a little bit of an increase.
Yeah, just to round it up.
We don't, you have some other questions, I know. Do you need a motion for all of those?
No, we don't need a formal motion at this point. We don't have a motion on the floor to approve the resolution at this point.
Gotcha.
We just need a consensus from council
plug.
about what number to plug in there, then we'll get a motion to approve the resolution with that number in it.
I'm throwing out 550,000.
Let me ask a question real quick, please. I'll make sure I understand. The very top, the undesignated fund balance is 772.
That's what I expect to end this year with.
Okay. Which is the same as down at the bottom, the total fund balance you expect October 1, 2015 of 897 under this scenario. which is obviously a pretty significant increase in ending fund balance. So from 772, all things,
Well, the reason there's an increase or no decrease, because I haven't allocated any outside
yeah,
hotel funding yet.
isn't that, okay.
That's the whole purpose of what we're doing
Oh,
here.
so the 558 is available, and what you're saying, Mr. Alvarez, is the whole you want to give 550
Yeah,
out of the 558?
Correct.
Okay. Sorry.
You
Had to
stay,
catch up there.
you stay within the 897, but you're allocating 550 now for the outside, and the difference go to reserve.
So we have a 550, and then we have a, Mr. Bachman, did you have a ending number?
Just a second.
Okay, no problem. How about on the right side over here, y'all quiet? Yeah.
Got a doctor with a calculator there.
That could be dangerous.
Somebody, I just need somebody to say 0, and then we can start all over, huh? So,
Okay, that would give you a reserved fund balance of 397.85 added. So then that would bring us to, it's an extra 124,932. Plus the 897, 865.
and the 550, I was just basing it on what 2013 performance was, 547 more or less. I mean, 545,
545, yeah.
and then just rounding it up another to 550.
there are more applicants for this year, so it still is, depending on what the committee decides to fund, they may not fund them all.
Well, some of the requests, their increases are just significant. They're jumps from last year's funding to what they're requesting.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a reasonable school of thought, in my opinion, of what Mr. Alvarez is saying. It's just, if you want to maintain a 3 months operations and just do that in perpetuity, it is what it is. It removes a decision from councils to some extent. In other words, it's the hotels are collecting it, use it, be done with it as long as we have 3 months of operations. And that's a reasonable, we can't set a policy like that necessarily, but you could do it. I don't know.
Don't forget too, though, parks, and we're working hard to bring in tournaments. And so we've got this, what we think we'll do for next year, but we're going to grow that. So, and that's.
So it
gonna take-
changes.
That's going to take some hot funds to do that too.
So the money that we're pulling out as a city is affecting.
So shouldn't we leave a little bit more if we're anticipating for the parks more than the 3 months reserve?
Well,
If we're going to want to have
That's an operating
something?
reserve. and
No,
we-
that's just,
Yeah.
not okay.
For reimbursement.
That's just in, that,
That reserve number, if you look up all city-related operations there, that's just 3 months. In
Okay,
other
but-
words, just to handle any shortfalls and receipts.
So you're
That's just a
talking about
policy.
the 897 would be used in case we needed something for,
No,
nope?
I apologize for jumping in too early. I assume that you're going to say the whole
Oh, well, no,
887.
yeah, well, part
Not
of
the
the
whole
seven.
number. What we're suggesting is you might want to consider leaving $339,000 back, which is 3 months of city operating projects.
Okay, that being said, you're talking also about the parks maybe needing some money. They would have to use it from the reserve.
that's
Or-
correct. If y'all
right, from
spend
the
all that 558,
Right,
we have to
so-
bring down the reserve for 3 months. And now, we
One-
know what we're proposing for 15. He's got it listed. But I'm just saying, when the mayor starts talking about adopting a policy of spending it all but the 3 months, I'm just saying, don't forget in the future.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
In 16 or 17, we may be coming back to the table with more activities that the parks is going
And
to do.
if I might add, there's a correlation, hopefully, that as you increase your expenditure, you have an increase in hotels' revenues too as well. That's the whole idea, is to keep, well, that's the theory, expand it.
But it also depends on what.
How
rate
aggressive you
you're
want to
gonna
get
do.
with it and try to market it. What she's referring, you need to go market earlier. It's going to take some money at the early beginnings
is.
of it before it starts kicking in. That's a given. I was talking about beyond that date, yeah.
So when you just mentioned setting a policy that we're just going to, only
Well-
3 months, I'm just saying, don't forget,
Yeah, well,
as we
that's what I'm saying, that
come
we
down
need
the-
to make sure that we have that reserve
Some,
because,
yes.
we know that we're not going to have the big budget money in parks, so we would need to think about other resources. So I think this is an excellent one, just like we did for, the pitcher's mounts and things that we came back and got
Yep.
some money from here, so.
Yeah.
And I think that would be
Keep in mind also that hotel funds are very volatile, so
Right,
it's like,
right.
we like to see it, maybe used in the future, but there's also that
The
up and downs, up
volatility,
and downs.
yes.
Well, I mean, in all fairness, our items are coming out of here first. Of course, we could change that, but,
I'm gonna make a proposal, 500.
okay. Thank you. I was going to ask Ms. Solis if she had a number too.
Well, and that's what I
Oh,
was,
you don't want to ask me.
Councilman Solis, do you have a number in mind that you're proposing?
500 sounds good.
I was actually a little lower, only because I'm still nervous about taking so much of that reserve fund. I mean, we're going from 772, 933, down to 339,000 or whatever it's going to be, 300 and, so adding another 58 to it, so
Yeah.
390.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, and I don't speak for everybody, but, the concept of a visitor center played heavily in there, and there's a point where there's not a need to withhold that much of that money, because the hotelers are collecting it. It's just a school of thought, Jeff. You can certainly disagree, but
Well, I like
they're
that
collecting
we
it, they
got
want
to
to
do
use it.
the renovations to the ball fields.
Yeah.
And that took a good bit of money. And that was, $120,000?
It was a lot. Yeah.
Mhm.
It was a
So,
lot.
I mean, I'd like to see us leave a reserve fund balance of about $500,000, because as we've seen in the past, when something comes along like that, it doesn't
Yeah.
take long to
Let me use it
really
up.
dip into
So
it.
what is
Well,
that, if you wanted to leave 500, what?
And just as, when the receipts did come in, we were able to do increased funding to different programs. Why should we not do the opposite when receipts are down?
Yours comes in at 527.
Hmm?
You said if you had an ending fund balance of 500, for example, that would mean, if my math is right,
I would take 120,000 off of the available.
56. I
397.
keep going backwards here. Put my calculator up.
The 339, he would increase the 339 to 500.
Which would
Could just
mean
move it up
available
one.
funds for this project would be 397,865. Is that right?
For the
Call
total,
it 400.
Call it 400.
400, yeah.
Okay.
That's fine.
Mr. Bognar does make a good point. You got to think, this is just a starting point. I know during the year, you're going to be monitoring the hotel tax, and you might have a project coming in, your receipts are higher, then you can have some other allocation. But I think this is a fair beginning start. Not necessarily has to go drastically,
Yeah, I don't, mid-year, we have this one window of accepting applications, and I would hate to mess with that mid-year.
Well,
We've done it before when we needed to for reasons, but, we try to avoid it.
What I was referring to, other project that council sees they want to take advantage of, other than the ones.
I'd go along with Mr. Bachknight's proposal.
I mean, it's gonna require tough choices on what gets funded, and I'm not saying that it's gonna be easy, but that's gonna be a lot of lobbying by groups, I know, but I still think it's the right thing to do, is to
So,
spend
Jeff,
some of the reserves, not all
are
of it,
you
yes.
saying 400,000 and out of that 205.8 would go for the arts?
I don't know what the percentage is, I didn't get that far.
Well, it's gonna, the
366.
percentage doesn't change.
Yeah,
It's gonna be
Up to
either
366.
up to 366.
Up to
But
366.
if we go to 400, then 258 would be probably for the arts? Because
It
that's
could be a max up
50%.
to, yeah, but it could be a max up to, but,
But that wouldn't leave too much for history
I know.
and the others, so.
right, that's what I
You
said.
wanted,
It's-
yeah.
You don't have to spend that entire 15% on the arts either. I mean, if
Mm-hmm.
somebody on the committee felt like an history or sports project, outweighed, then they may want to fund it 100%. You just cannot exceed that amount on arts, so
Okay.
you're not.
So do we tell them that? Is that what you're needing tonight? The figure for the total hot funds plus the arts?
No, just
Or
the
just the
total.
total?
The total,
Just the
and
total.
then
Okay.
the committee will decide how
Oh,
to
okay.
allocate that money, and they just will not exceed that 366. They
Okay.
can spend less on the arts, but,
Okay.
yeah, just that total number.
Well, I feel comfortable with 400,000.
550, 400, 400,
400 there.
400 there. That's 3. That's 4. What,
You need a motion.
what did you say?
No, we're just looking for
voting
consensus so we
yet.
can put something in the resolution.
Then we'll vote.
We don't have a motion on this.
I thought I heard 500.
You had 5
He
on
had
it.
said 5, and I thought it was
5.
okay, but I think 4 sounds better. I would rather go with 4.
4?
Okay, that sounds like consensus has settled around $400,000. So we will put that number in the resolution in just a minute and read it. There are a couple of other questions which I think are probably easier questions to answer, but I need some guidance to give the committee guidance on a couple of issues. One of them is that there's always been an informal guidance from council that this was primarily for nonprofit organizations. And we specifically ask for nonprofit status in the application, and every year the applicants have all been nonprofit entities. This year we do have an applicant who is a for-profit enterprise, and so I need clarification from council. How firmly do you feel about the idea of this money being used for nonprofits only? Should I eliminate that applicant on the basis of the fact that they are a for-profit enterprise? Or should we open this up to for-profit? Because at that point, you're setting a precedent that for-profit enterprises can come apply for government subsidies.
May I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any reason, I would say off the cuff, that you should stick with the non-for-profit? That would make the most sense and not set the precedent. But is there any countervailing reason that we should even consider that of merit?
The only reason that I can give you is that there's no legal requirement that it be nonprofit. I don't have a recommendation to you that you open it up. In fact, I think it's probably wiser that you continue to limit this to nonprofit organizations, because that way you don't have a for-profit company come into town and try to get government money through this program.
That would certainly have been, without any strong reason otherwise, that would certainly be my feeling.
It continues the trend that council has done in the past, but it does specifically affect one of the applicants, and I want to make sure that I've got council's support and that I'm directing the committee the way that council wants to see this directed.
And historically, we've always leaned towards nonprofits because they demonstrate volunteerism amongst our citizenry that believe in these things. They go out and volunteer tons of time. They don't make any money for themselves. No one gets paid, and they put on an event that helps the citizens. I would like to stay out of the profit one myself for that reason.
Is there anyone who feels otherwise?
Just to speak to it, it's interesting because the purpose of Hotel Motel is not to promote volunteerism.
Valid point.
If a company came in here and filled every single room for 3 months, but they were for profit, and it was the arts, why should we care? In a way, I'm just saying, I'm just being the devil's advocate.
Point.
I mean, the initial knee-jerk reaction is exactly what y'all said. What difference does it make, though, if you think about it? If you ask a guy that owns a hotel that's collecting these taxes, whether he cares, I doubt it. He just wants his hotel full. So I don't know. I mean, it's frustrating, and this is why I love every year, and that's a joke, this part of the budgeting process, because I don't like this distribution of this money. It's always rife with issues. We can leave it, but I think we should consider it, think about it. This is a short notice, for this kind of thing. I don't know about you guys. I would like to think about that and see what the community says more, but we don't have that time.
Can I ask a question? When they picked up their application, were they told that it was just non-for-profit, or they were not told?
No, they're not told that it's nonprofit organizations only. We ask that question on the front end, and the committee has always given preference to nonprofits. That's the direction that I've given them in the past, that it's not a requirement, but we give preference to, because that's the direction I've gotten from council. But the truth is, we've never had anyone who was a for-profit, so that never meant anything.
Straight Arrow Archery Learning Center?
They are nonprofit.
Okay.
And before we go down that road, Councilman, I do not intend to talk about which applicant is the for-profit unless y'all tell me to do so. I think it's probably better for you to make the decision without knowing which applicant we're talking about. If you want to know, obviously it's within your purview to know.
Or not to.
Of course, the committee could, I don't want to appear that we're not stepping up and making a decision. We could ask the committee to do it. Just,
Right.
if they don't happen to allocate anything to a nonprofit, or a profit, then so be it.
But they're going to be given the discretion, of they won't know either, right?
They will know
They know.
because
They
it's
will
on the
know?
application that they
They've got
review.
everything.
Oh, okay.
So we
We're
can
just
always
trying to
pull
set
it.
policy. We're not
Yeah.
trying to make the decision tonight on who
All right.
does and who doesn't. We're trying to set a policy,
Yeah.
which is a totally different thing.
I don't feel like I have clear direction yet.
Okay, I
No.
think that we need to really look at their application and see, because aren't they supposed to provide us with some kind of information as to how many people they brought in?
Yes.
Okay, and just let the committee decide based on their data, because, I mean, if we say no for profit, yet their paperwork shows that they brought in a lot of people, I would think that, let's just try it.
One of the examples, when I was thinking about this is you probably know I like to run. I go do these marathons. There's some marathon series that are for profit that go all over the country and bring literally 60,000 people to San Antonio, for example. And every time I register, they ask me all the questions of what hotel and where and did I fly. That's why they're gathering that data, so they can probably submit it to their CVB. So, I don't know whether that entity would, in that case, San Antonio, much larger, would rely on that CVB funding. I kind of doubt it, but evidently it's allowed. And in that case, bringing 50, 60,000 people from out of town into a city, the hotelers like it, so they want it, And I can see that here. It's just much smaller scale. I just don't, it's a tough question. So you prefer maybe the committee would look at it
Right,
and
once they look at
decide.
everything and they can decide if they want, because they're just an applicant, so, based on what the funds that they have, and they can decide, okay, let's do it or not do it, or try it, just give them a chance and see how it turns out.
What do y'all? and
Well, Councilman Solis makes a good point. We are asking the committee to come back with recommendations.
Right.
We do not necessarily take their recommendations 100%. We may modify them, but we want them to make their recommendations based upon the information. We've asked them to do that. Perhaps we should leave it up to the committee.
That's fine with me.
Y'all want to do that?
Okay. So the direction that I'm taking is that you are open to for-profit entities, and I'll pass that on to the committee and allow them to make a recommendation back to you.
And just to be clear, between now and when that recommendation gets here to all of us, we may
You may modify
we may
that.
modify it and
Sure,
decide.
sure.
Mr. Alvarez, is that?
Yeah, I'm just going to go for the record. I'm not, for that. I want to stay strictly nonprofit. Two reasons. If there's a for-profit entity that wants this assistance, then I want to negotiate a percentage back to the city. Two, there are a lot of events out there that are for profit by promoters going on already in this community. They take a big risk, and they rent our facilities and so forth and so on. They do their thing, and that's where it ends. But if we're going to start giving out grants or hotel to profits, then I would like to see a return on that investment more than just a grant. Because there'd be, I think, a lot of others that would want to partake in that fruit. Just my opinion.
Well, and those are good points, and not to be argumentative, but, the CVB does work for profit companies, and if an entity comes in and does a show, they'll assist with it. So in the return, I would say, is the benefit to the community. But again, this committee of 7 has 2 hotelers on it, and those are the guys that I think they want, just a different viewpoint, but your point is well taken.
And I can't emphasize that the hotelers in that committee need to show up to the meetings.
Oh, I
It's my
agree.
understanding they've been absent, and that doesn't solve anything, I think.
I agree. I agree very much.
Okay, so I've got my direction on that. The third question I told you I would ask, I have a strong recommendation on, and I want to make sure that council agrees with my recommendation before I make a change to the contracts that we've issued in past years. If you go back historically, there was another one of these informal rules that advertising dollars needed to be spent on advertising that targeted people more than 90 miles away. Advertising dollars, promotional dollars can only be spent in a way to bring tourists to our community, okay? And Miles Risley, former city attorney, had a rule that he wanted to see a 90-mile buffer as a way of guaranteeing that those people would be tourists. I would like to require contractually in the contract that the applicant demonstrate that their advertising reach an audience more than 90 miles away, before they qualify to receive the funding after their post-event report. If they're putting advertising or promotional on their website, I've confirmed with LaRue that the Google metrics that she talks about here allow her to tell whether the people who are visiting that website are from within this area or in a major metroplex. She can, with pretty good granularity, tell where those people are coming or are viewing the web page from. And so then you can extrapolate from that your advertising has reached those people. Likewise, if you're doing direct mailings or billboards or other kinds of advertising, that advertising would have to be directed to people outside of this market. For example, if somebody were to purchase a billboard on Main Street, it's very difficult to argue that that advertising is bringing in tourists from another community. And so I would like to make sure that that is protected in the contract, that the advertising must be directed at people outside of that region. Unless that causes heartburn for council, I intend to modify the contract that way.
I could see a good point of that. However, let's say Boot Fest is going on this weekend, and I got a giant billboard out on 59, where I draw in some strays. I'm trying to think in terms of effectiveness as well. I don't want their total advertising budget to be considered, but I can see exceptions where that might be.
Would you prefer a clause that says that some portion of the advertising must be targeted or a majority of the advertising?
Not exactly sure. I'm still mulling it over in my mind. I'm basically speaking before I think, perhaps.
Well, I'm catching you guys with this cold. I recognize that. But
Excuse me, but what did you say we currently have in our contract?
there is no requirement in our current contract. And so a applicant can qualify for promotional activity by saying they're going to advertise their event, and then they can submit receipts where all of their advertising is local. Maybe it's all with the newspaper, or maybe it's all with a billboard. There's no requirement that that advertising be targeted outside of our community.
Doesn't really make sense to, if, let's say I wanted to buy 3 billboards and they were all in Victoria to promote it. Well, we're trying to get people from out of town.
That's exactly right.
So-
But when we get to the post-event report, they've complied with their contract. You know, and if somebody wants to come back and argue with me about that, then we're going to get into an argument about, you know, is this a valid expenditure or not? And so I think it's much clearer on the front end to make that a contractual requirement.
I think reimbursement for advertising that's targeting 90 miles away is fair. Doesn't mean you can't advertise here. It just means these funds aren't going to be available for it.
Right.
And I believe Boot Fest, our local advertisement is paid for through sponsorships and not hot funds. LaRue's shaking her head, that's correct. So anything you see from Boot Fest that's local, we're not using hot money to pay for that.
Right.
I would just suggest that.
That was a bad example on my part in
Well,
that case.
I just want to
yes.
make sure
You're correct.
you'll see it.
I would suggest you find a legal boundary of counties or something rather than just a 90-mile, so you don't have to end up testing that.
Okay.
Like the regional pick is 13 counties, maybe outside that or a
We're
smaller,
going to measure it by miles, where this
Just-
billboard is.
maybe contiguous counties to
I
Victoria.
would say outside of Victoria County. Because you got folks from all in the region that would travel less than 50 miles to an event here.
But you want them to stay the night.
Yep.
Yeah.
Reason
So they're going to
miles,
still do some spending here.
Well, in order to be a
That's the-
tourist, they have to spend the night in a hotel.
That doesn't meet the smell
usually
test.
90 miles was a delineating term, because more than 90 miles is likely someone to stay
It's-
overnight as
that's
opposed
right.
to driving home after the event. And that's why the 90 miles number came from. It's just that I remember from when we had the discussion.
And that doesn't guarantee that they will spend the night, of course.
No.
But I think
But it
someone
increases the odds.
from Houston is more likely to spend the night than someone from El Campo is the idea.
That's why that number was chosen.
The-
I thought maybe the historical perspective would be useful.
Can you come back with a different, do you want to do, like I suggested, an existing legal boundary?
I'm comfortable with that. You said the 13-county area.
Well, I don't know what that translates into miles off the top of my
I
head,
don't
but I would
I don't have a
suggest
problem
that.
with the 90-mile thing. I'm trying to make sure we fully discuss it and fully understand
Right.
what this can do. If someone is wanting to do a flycatcher type advertisement for an event, they could surely do so. It just wouldn't be using these funds. It wouldn't prevent them from doing so. And I'm just trying to make sure we've talked about all the various angles of this before we make that decision.
along those same lines, find out from some other communities. Everybody's wrestled with this idea.
Okay. And this is something I can certainly bring back to you when we bring back the recommendation, because I'll bring back the draft contracts at that time for your approval. And so we can certainly hash this out further then. All right, but I understand y'all are generally in favor of the concept. We just want to hash out where that bear.
Trying to make sure we've, talked it out, make sure we haven't.
Okay,
done
Make it
something.
reasonable.
Great, all right. Moving forward, then, I plan on bringing back to you the recommendation on the August 19th meeting. The committee has asked that in next year's cycle, that the legal department and the finance department review the post-event reports rather than the committee being brought back in. They felt that it was a waste of time for them to review the application again. That was harsh words. I shouldn't say that. That was not their words. That the only question that they're being asked is, did the applicant do what they said they were going to do? The legal department's reviewing it for legal requirements. The finance department is reviewing it for financial requirements. And they felt like the legal department could just as easily review the post-event report to see if they did what they did. That streamlines the process of not having to get that committee back together for those post-event reports as often. And if you're comfortable with that change, we'll make that change as well.
Sounds very good, because
Okay.
much of this is contract law, which would be the legal.
All
And
right.
the finance portion is making sure everything's in order.
Council, I appreciate that extended discussion on this item.
It's a resolution.
We have a resolution that we're about to bring forward. We have now settled that we're going to put $400,000 into the blank on the resolution, specifically with the dollar figure in paragraph 1. The city will then, we're considering a resolution where the city would adopt a program for support of outside agencies through the expenditure of not more than $400,000 of hotel occupancy tax funds. The caption of that resolution is, "A resolution adopting a program for the support of outside agencies through hotel occupancy tax funds and declaring an effective date."
So move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion in 2 seconds. Just, I have to get the last word a little bit. Just to those folks that this represents a significant decrease. And I think people need to put it into perspective, especially the agencies applying for this funds. You know, none of us up here really like this volatility, but it's going to happen. Just remember, a few years ago, it was $88,000. Hopefully, going forward, that volatility will smooth out over the years, but it's not a entitlement, it's a privilege to have this money, to make it available in this manner. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Can I ask one question?
Please do.
This does not affect our decision on whether or not any of these expenditures before, right?
That's correct.
Like
This-
the mobile visitor center.
You're asking about the other city
No.
budgeted expenditures, and this is
Okay.
not
Just
talking
wanted
about
to make
that
sure.
at all.
All right.
Okay, any further questions? We have a motion in 2 seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay.
Aye.
To Mr. Alvarez and Dr. Young in opposition. Okay.
That takes us to E5. Thank you, council, for that. E5 is a resolution approving a change order number 1 and authorizing the Director of Public Works to execute the change to the 2013-14 Seal Coat Project, Woodway Subdivision and Bridle Ridge and Saddlebrook Subdivisions with James Construction Group LLC for the addition of a double-course seal to the Edinburgh Street and a prime and single-course seal to the Public Works Facility parking lot in the amount of $200,562.50, bringing the new contract amount to $1,014,095 and declaring an effective date.
Move we adopt.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on E5?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
Ms. Solis?
Okay, this is going to extend the life. Is this going to be according to the adoption that we did of the new streets? Is that why the change, or is this just because we want to put a second coat on there?
Talking about Edinburgh Street?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The original project did not include Edinburgh. It included Bridle Ridge and Saddlebrook, which are adjacent to Edinburgh. We got a very good unit price on that two-course seal coat, and so it came in under budget. Edinburgh Street is a collector that receives a lot of traffic off of Navarro into not only Bridle Ridge and Saddlebrook, but also into that whole North Crest area. And it is right now in our CIP proposed to be rebuilt in 2019, but we see some benefit to going ahead and putting a seal on it right now to help preserve it up until 2019 because it is such a heavily traveled collector.
Okay, so this is adding Edinburgh to the project. It wasn't originally in the bid.
That's correct.
Okay, okay.
Good question.
Yeah, because it was a lot of money, and I said,
Then, well, then that, in 2019, when this was planned to be redone, we'll be able to, I mean, obviously yearly, we look at those CIP projects and shift and move, and that may give us some flexibility there.
That's correct.
Any further questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you.
Item E6 is a resolution awarding the water meter relocations on US Highway 59 North, that is Highway 87 South to Loop 463, project to Falcon Lease Operating Company of Victoria, Texas, for their low quote of $48,720 and declaring an effective date.
Council?
Motion we adopt E6.
Motion second for E6. Is there any questions? Moving lots of water
okay.
meters.
I just want to ask a question. With the no bid, do we still qualify for the, where you have to go out and bid on the projects, you know, where we have to have 3 bids? Because they sent in their no bids, we qualify for it?
The answer to that question is yes. He's
Okay.
pointing at me.
Right,
That's
right.
a legal
I saw that.
analysis
and I
question.
said, okay. So, it's in
Yes, we
your
do. We went
Okay.
out and sought bids, and we received bids, even though some of them refused to bid.
Okay.
It counts.
It counts.
Made an effort.
That's right.
Yeah, it's unfortunate they didn't bid, but they're also busy.
Everybody's very busy.
It's pretty amazing.
Right.
So, okay. That doesn't happen too often.
Too often, it's,
Yeah,
contractors are very busy right now.
understood. Okay, we do have a motion second. No further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So that concludes our resolutions. We do have one item from the city manager, city manager reports, some appointments.
Yes, Mayor and Council, there are appointments to consider for the Victoria Health Facilities Development Corporation, the Planning Commission, and the Municipal Court Judge. The Victoria Health Facilities Development Corporation consists of 3 council members. The current members are Tom Halapaska, Emmett Alvarez, and Dr. Andrew Young. If I can bring forward a resolution at the next meeting, if those 3 members would like to be reappointed to that board.
Dr. Young says yes. Mr. Halapaska says
We
yes.
haven't met this year, so it's pretty heavy workload.
Yeah.
Don't jump on it
And
quick enough.
Mr. Alvarez reluctantly says yes.
Reluctantly says yes.
Okay.
Okay,
So the Planning Commission has
Double
3
your pay.
members up for consideration. Vic Caldwell and James Wayne are eligible for reappointment, and they both desire reappointment. Louise Patillo is ineligible due to term limits, so that position will definitely need to be filled with someone new. There are 3 applications before you. Those individuals have applied in the past, and I have contacted them, and they're all willing to be considered. If you have anybody else that would you like to consider, we can bring that forward, so.
I'd like to reach out to some of the other applicants that we considered for the sales tax board, maybe Parks and Commission. There's some other applicants out there.
so could we, on the 5th is our next meeting, we could fill those,
Right.
perhaps have a
So
discussion
do
there.
you want me to contact those individuals, or are you all going to contact, or how would you like for me to handle that?
If they were applying for the Parks Board and did not wish to apply for Planning Commission, would that be fruitful to contact someone who was requesting a different appointment? I guess that'd be my question.
Well, maybe because that was available at the time.
Perhaps.
Possibly. It wouldn't, I mean, they've showed interest. I know there's a lot of other good applicants out there too. I'd like to give them at least the invitation. Anybody else out of the public that might be interested, I'm
Well,
encouraged that folks are interested.
so would you like for me to contact them and tell them that there is this appointment coming up, and if they're interested, to please submit an application? Would that work for
My
you?
answer is yes to that.
Okay.
question. I don't know about everybody else.
That's fine. It brings it off the record suggestion, when I look at this application, this is board/commission/committee desired, then a blank, and then the applicant fills in the specific thing he or she wants to apply for. I wonder if we shouldn't, how many are there? Well, there's a lot of things they can apply for where they could circle the ones they're interested in. Just a thought. I don't know if you want to modify your form or not, but that way
I can do that.
Resolve what you just pointed out, perhaps. But we can certainly contact the others. Anyone here can contact anyone they want about these planning commission spots. And then if we need to vote at the next meeting, if we have more than enough, multiple choices, we'll just vote. Correct? Okay.
Coupled with the fact
have
we
a
got some
co-
television time, and we could advertise out to the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a consensus to reappoint the two that wish to be reappointed, though? And then that would only leave one?
I have no problem with the reappointment of those two.
I don't either. Okay. Jared doesn't.
Need one?
And perhaps the advocate will even write a nice story on that we're seeking applicants.
Which means, basically, we have no pressure there, Ms. Crowe. We have one position at the next meeting we'll have to fill. We have 3 here, and then any others that come forward. And so we'll probably have to vote, which is fine. We can vote at the next meeting. Okay.
Okay. And then the following one is the municipal court judge. Constance Philly Johnson is currently our presiding judge, and her 2-year term expires on July the 24th. The judge is appointed by the council and can hold that office for 2 years. Reappointment will automatically take place 91 days after the term expires if no action is taken by the city council. However, if you want to go ahead with a resolution to reappoint, you can do that as well.
I'm assuming she wants to be reappointed.
Yes.
Okay.
And for the record, I'm very satisfied with Judge Johnson. In addition to being tremendously professional, she strikes a very good balance between being firm and compassionate.
I do agree with that statement.
Never heard anything bad, only good, so.
So we do
think
want to
we should
come
do
back with the resolution?
Yes.
I would like to see a resolution just to reaffirm our support of her. I don't see anyone that,
I'd like to see something done in a positive,
Okay.
as opposed to
Okay.
letting it fall in by
Quick
itself.
question on the planning commission. It's a term limit? I didn't know we had term limits on planning commission. Is it
Planning and Parks.
2 3-year terms? Do we know? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
okay, that is the city manager reports are concluded. You don't have anything else? Work session. All right, we'll talk about the budget. And everyone should have a 3-page worksheet that looks like this that Gilbert,
Yes.
our city manager, sent out earlier this week.
And then I think there was,
copies if you need some.
I was going to say, I think there was hard copies in their read files.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, that.
Yes.
So,
Do you,
May I have one, please?
Mr. Rayner, do you want to go through this?
Same one I already got, right? Or change? Okay, want to make sure.
Let me make some comments first, and while you're still passing a few of those around, I've met with the city manager earlier, as well as Mr. Reyna, and I'd asked them to create the spreadsheet in around that .58, that 58-cent tax rate. Of course, you all can see there that we're currently at 59.96. Staff proposed the .6086 to do everything that was requested and asked for and to fully fund it. After some discussion, I asked them to put that second column together around the 58. We really, at this point tonight, we're not voting on the tax rate. Make that very clear. That comes later in August and September. But we do need a consensus on the number. It would be very helpful to staff so that they could print a draft budget to give to us. Of course, that can always be amended in this entire process. It does not mean we're accepting that, but we do need a number. And so I would ask that council seriously consider that .58 as a starting point, or, we may very well end up with that. I don't know. You guys have a lot to look at as well as myself. Do y'all feel comfortable with the .58 so we could print a budget?
I'd like to see, Mr. Mayor, the .5618, the effective tax rate, and I'd just like to explain my rationale. I think, as an elected official, I think we all need to explain ourselves. I think as I listen to people like Paul Craig Roberts, the Assistant Secretary of the Treasury under the Reagan administration, David Stockman, the former OMB Director, and many others, economists, it seems in real terms, there's been no growth in income for the American families across the United States, and I'm talking about in real terms. The job growth in the United States has been primarily in the part-time job sector, and what you've got is people losing full-time jobs and getting one or two part-time jobs. Last quarter, the GDP was negative. I think it'll probably be negative in the coming quarter or be slightly positive and then readjusted back negative when it's all over and done with. I think if the economy's in recovery, I don't understand why we're still printing money to fund our expenditures. On a local level, I think our sales tax, it's been down slightly to flat. But, I think when you consider that the local taxpayer, gas is up, food is up, insurance premiums are up, just talking to my constituents, I think they're really feeling the pinch with all those things. You consider that we haven't even fully felt the impact of Obamacare, which is going to put a greater impact on folks. So in my thought, I don't think my constituents can afford an increase in property taxes. And therefore, I think the best thing we can do for our citizens is to allow them in these difficult times to keep every penny they can, they can hold on to pay their bills, buy their food, buy their gas, and keep a roof over their head. So that's what I feel would be the appropriate thing.
Just clarification, the city doesn't print money.
No. I was.
Okay.
I assume that.
I was talking about our irresponsible friends in Washington.
Okay.
Which does impact us, unfortunately.
City Manager, you.
Sure, I was just going to point out, and I'm sure you all picked up on that third page of that handout, it does show if you want to get down to the effective tax rate, assuming we do that $7 million bond issue, then we would need to find $589,000 more in cuts.
Right.
Because we did adjust the sales tax revenue up based on the last 2 months' trend, but that's the number that we want to get there.
And I hope everyone saw I'm sorry, Jeff, the prior month was a 10% increase, so it's really crazy. Good news, but frustrating to predict. Anyway.
It's still volatile, and that's why I
Yes.
like to see that reserve at least at 25%.
Right.
Mr. Rainey, on the $4 million bond issuance, what would that debt rate be instead of 0.2506?
It'd be about 72 cents, 0.0072 less, so about 24 some change. And the difference you're looking at about 0.0072 taken off.
0.07.
0.0072 or 0.008.
0.2434.
2434?
Yes.
Wow, that's not much. 0.00, that doesn't give you much. Wow. I didn't know it was that. Okay, good question. But do y'all, again, I know that staff really wants to get a number to get this budget printed. Can we, anyone have any other thoughts?
You want to start?
Well, a couple of things. Some of the cuts that are being recommended, I can't support. I can't support a couple of the cuts, the elimination of the ambassadors program, certainly the membership to the I-69 coalition. Some of the other recommended cuts I can't support.
You want
Plus, excuse me?
I'm sorry. Continue. I apologize.
We want to let Mr. Rayner go ahead and explain it first.
Yeah, I was thinking,
I think that might be,
okay.
yeah.
On the cuts,
Well, just what's being recommended here to bring the rate down to 58 cents. You want to just kind of go over that sheet, Mr.?
The actual financial dollars section of it. As to the cuts, go ahead.
Start with the beginning fund balance,
All
and
right.
that each A, B, C, D, you
I'll
can
work it down.
direct us. Yes, sir. I think
Okay.
it'd be great.
Well, let me start saying, if I'm looking up like this, not because I'm frowning, it's just that I lost my glasses. These are old pairs, so I got trifocus, so it's not I'm looking at you weird. It's that's the only time I can sing you.
Glad you clarified that.
Me too. I was starting to wonder about Gilbert.
So anyway, I don't know if y'all noticed that earlier, because I was going like this, like, wait a minute, you're going too fast. Okay. All right, let's talk, I want to focus on the right-hand side on the revised proposal. As the mayor said, your effective tax rate right now, with the assumption that, if we come in at 8% growth, our effective tax rate right now sits about 56.18. The rollback rate is around 59.40. So the middle of the road is the 58. That's why we picked that number. On the beginning fund balance, it was increased, as you know, from the left side to the right side. I'm just going to go down the second page on number A. We had original $14.3 million fund balance, but as you recall, sales tax came in a little higher in the last month, and we adjusted the projection. As a result of that, I'm adding about $456,000 in the overall. But at the same time, one of the recommendations that we're planning to suggest to council is that, as you recall, in 2015, we're suggesting to replace the MDTs and the video and the PD cars. In the 2015, that's about $340,000. We're suggesting maybe take a portion, about 75% of that money, start doing them now. As I don't know if you're aware, but we have about 7 or 8 cars still in the lot that might as well go ahead and get that kick-started right now and start that program early. So we add in the $485. I'm suggesting that we go ahead and do that in 2014, 75% of that budget. We suggested 15. That equates to about $258,000. So you end up with a beginning fund balance of about 14.58. That's that new number from last time to the new number. The second one, the B, we went from 15.2 from ad valorem tax revenue to the $14.118 million. Well, it's because we adjusted the tax rate down to the 58 cents, which went from a 30.35 to 3.4 some change. That's a decrease over $1 million in ad valorem tax revenue.
It's the .6086 difference to the .58. Okay.
The next change is right there on sales tax, of course. Since I'm expecting the sales tax to come in a little better for 2014, I have adjusted the 2015 fiscal year projection, which increased to 17,616. Okay, that's an additional $460,000. If you add up all that, compare total revenues, what was originally proposed to the total revenue that we're revising it proposed, you had a decrease in revenue about $629,000. Okay, going down on the reoccurring, these are old programs that are currently in place. Letter D, E, F, and G. If you just follow me on the next page, I'm just going to flip the page. Basically, what we have there is some recommendations of reducing the budget. General administrative expenses, about $19,800, would consist of the city manager's professional services of $9,500. Public information system, the TV channel, of $10,350. Now, keep in mind, this is not the whole program. This is basically, correct me, OC, Mr. Garrett, this is strictly the Planning Commission and Parks Commission.
Filming it.
Yeah.
Filming it.
Recording, yeah.
Recording it.
The lady doesn't like to hear that right now, but that's what we're suggesting.
It still leaves filming for the council.
Then also, we reduced the street sweeping program by $20,000.
For the fuel.
I'm
Fuel.
sorry, the fuel. Oh, I went down the wrong line.
We reduced the street by
Oh, the fuel
300.
budget.
Yeah, the street.
Due to
sweeping.
outsourcing, okay, I misread my comment. In the original proposal, I left $20,000 in there, and that's my bad, and I apologize for that. So I went back and reduced that $20,000 equivalent amount that if we outsourced it. So that's coming off. That's that $20,000 there. And then we went back into Parks and Library. In the Parks Department, we reduced the pool. We made a decision, or hopefully not misspoke here, that last week we decided maybe we close the pool and we continue that in next year. You're looking at $56,000, $215,000 costs coming off. Park and Library Ambassador Program, of $25,836.
That's two positions
That's two positions. I think, I believe
that
they're
are
currently
vacant already,
Part-time position.
Part-time.
currently vacant, so we're just going to
Correct.
eliminate them.
Library subscription, $18,278. Library professional services, actually it's equipment rental, it's about $3,545. And the books, $11,000. A total of that is $114,874. In addition, we're suggesting in a non-departmental department, we reduced the, like Mr. Albert said, the I-69 membership of coalition fee about $2,800. And, of course, the zoo program for $25,000. If you take those items, we went from a recurring expense from last year of $45.16 million to about $44.88 million. And moving on to new recurring, to the one-time expenses, the only difference there, we're suggesting that, as we recall, I mentioned earlier, we're moving some money around from 2015 to 2014. That's the MDTs and the video system. We reduced that from a 372 down to the 86,250. In addition to that, I think I failed to mention that we also had some new revised costs by $27,000, and I adjusted it for that too. Those are the only major changes on the expense side. So we originally had a $50.1 million proposed budget when we first talked about it a few months ago. Now we're looking at about a $49.3 million, which is a decrease of about $789,000. Fund balance went from 12.2 to 12.5. Recurring revenues over expenses, we have $505,000. Now we're looking at $380,000. One of the key things on this one here that we're able to do is that in the previous proposal, we didn't have a reserve fund balance of 25%. On this one, we're able to meet the 25% of $241,000 in excess. So if we want to come down, we can come down, but the point is we have achieved our objective in moving that reserve up to a 25%.
Gilbert, that's a very critical point. You're saying if we went 25% even, we would have 241 extra there, because it's 25 point something.
241, yeah, 25 is based on the expense ratio of 25%, yeah.
Which is what this council, we've just worked to for many years now. So it's a hint, I guess, I shouldn't say that, but that 241,000 there, we could spend that and still keep a 25%
That's correct,
ending
if you want
fund
to narrow
balance.
it down.
If all things work out, because it is just a budget
Yeah.
to estimate. Okay.
So if you compare the current proposed tax rate of 58 to the effective tax rate, where hopefully if it comes in play, those numbers, we're in excess of that about 1.82 cents. As you recall before, we were about 4.68 cents. So we came down quite a bit. When we look at the rollback number, we went from a positive 146 to a negative 140. And when you compare the tax rate itself, remember we proposed a .0090. Now it's a reduction close to 2 pennies, 1.96 cents. On new revenues on ad valorem, now we're looking at a $294,000 versus the $1.4 million suggested, which is a decrease of about 8%. Those are the proposals that the city manager proposed, and I think it's a reasonable proposal. It's middle down the road. If council wish, as an overall, would like to get to effective tax rate, Ms. Garrett has pointed out, there's two avenues to go by there. If you want to do the $7 million, we got to go back to the drawing board, and Ms. Garrett will look at some serious programs to cut out of $509,000, because we can't just pick and choose just to make it up. We will make sure those costs won't come again for a while. The option two, if we propose a $4 million, and we're looking at cuts of $336. Of course, $336 is easy to swallow on the $500,000. So my suggestion would be you do the 4, and we look at a cuts of $336. And keep in mind, our CIP always consider it $4 million. Just that we have the luxury now to issue more, just to speed up the program faster. I know I went through it pretty quick. Bottom line, what we did, we went from a 60.87 down to 58 cents. So I'm comfortable with that. I know somebody will still like to do the effective tax rate. That's fine, but we just have to go back to the drawing board and do a little deeper cuts.
Mr. Alvarez, you mentioned some of the cuts, that 241 that's in excess of that 25,000. If consensus of council wishes to add some of those back in, it's a pool of money there that you can go back to.
Well, and, I also wanted council to consider, staff to consider that a budget line item request for seeing if we can continue to address the train horn noise. And we had discussed, the quiet zone, possibility of quiet zones. And there are a lot of different alternatives for quiet zones out there. Didn't realize that, thanks to city manager looking into this. But the first thing would be to consider funding a consultant that would come and study all these grade crossings and determine what would be the best alternative or option to address each of those crossings and give us options. So that's a request that could be anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000, depending on how many crossings you want them to look at. And something I think is worth our while. I know a lot of citizens are very upset about the train horn, and I don't think we can stop the train horn, period. But we could use other alternatives, and I think we've already deployed a couple of those on Ben Wilson and Stockbauer, and maybe another place or two.
The
Delmar.
curbs in the middle of the road. Yeah.
Some of those are pretty expensive alternatives, but there are other possibilities of other alternatives that would be less expensive if we were to look at them very hard and closely. So given that request, and then getting back to just seeing, again, some of the cuts, to reiterate, certainly can support the fuel reduction. That's a no-brainer. And the ambassador program, and then the I-69. But I'm still getting closer to the 59-cent mark.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to publicly state, I've been fighting this railroad stuff for years, and the horns and all that. And every time we'd hit a brick wall with some huge number. And just today, an acquaintance of mine pointed out that El Campo used nothing but simple delineators, about 55 foot of them. Well, in the past, we were told that that was not kosher. And after this many years, you kind of throw up your hands. He's come up with some new information. I think it could be a partial or a possible solution to some of these things. I don't believe it's a large amount of money to do this study, something in the $10,000 to $20,000 range, but this is a perennial irritant to a lot of the people, and perhaps we should look at this.
Do we have, Mr. Alvarez, I understand a specific line item, because we have a budgeted line item for just such outside services and studies? Is there something already in there?
No, there's nothing.
We
in
would
there.
need to add something
It
for
would be a
this.
one-time expense, yes, and we'd put it under professional services, under somebody's
Okay.
department, whether it's mine or, it would probably be under engineering, but, one of our departments. But I would also recommend that the 10,000 gets us about 10 crossings, the 20,000 gets us 20 crossings. I would recommend, if there's a majority of council that wishes to move forward, that we look at the 20,000 and give us some latitude on having up to 20 crossings looked at versus 10, because we've got a lot of crossings in this community.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, okay, and I don't necessarily disagree, and that's fine. I mean, I'm trying to fit it into this discussion. So we're going to start off adding a 20,000. Do we need to? We don't have to do that tonight.
No.
We could add it next time, or I have.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes, sir, please.
If we're talking about just $20,000, as you can see up above, we have about $234,000 based on these numbers as an excess reserve. So we can drill it. I'm not worried about the $20,000. My focus, if I may, and with all your permission, is that if we can focus on these proposed suggestions, or do we add, delete, cut? Because the $20,000 is, it's a valid project. It's not going to really affect my overall bottom line. Now, if Mr. Emmett's vote is to 59 cents, and that does have no effect, that does have, then I need to figure out what I need to back up, put back in. So that's not an issue. if council wants to go back and put 20,000 over the case, but I think that can be handled if that's majority of the council wants.
Can
I
we,
think it goes back to, we need a tax rate.
Yes.
can we take that up at
With
the
all
end?
due respect.
Can we, hold on,
Yes.
Mr.
yeah,
Alvarez,
We need a tax rate.
can we get through some of this and then take that up at the very end? Do you mind? Is that okay? Mr. Bucknight?
Sure, yeah, well, I had something to add on how we got to .58. Remember, we were essentially flat. Our budget was about $47,000 more than it was last year. And we've all said that we wanted a certain number of programs to be added. We wanted street maintenance, $1 million program, which needs to be done. STEP program, police and fire, and pay raises for city employees, and street sweeping, and outsource that. That's what's added to this budget, which got to the .6086. I think the mayor's done a great job challenging the staff to come back and say, let's see where we can cut so that we can still do these programs that we've all said we want to do, and not be at such a higher tax rate. I know it's still a 3.24% increase to go to that proposed rate of .58. And I would make a suggestion that we stay at the $4 million bond issuance that we all agreed and were happy with when we did our CIP discussion, which would put us at .5728. I realize that it's not a big amount, but at the same time, I don't know that we need to. At that point, we were okay that we didn't accelerate everything forward, and we were happy with $4 million of bond issuance. And give a little bit extra relief on that. That represents just under 2% tax increase and over the effective rate. Okay.
So basically,
Okay, so
what
we've
you said,
got
make sure
Go ahead.
Let's let them talk.
I would
Okay.
be at .5728.
Okay.
Okay, so
And I could
you're-
support that, whereas last time we spoke, I really wanted to be at the effective rate. I've gone through this, sat with staff, and I feel like the cuts are appropriate.
that's your message.
Okay, Mr. Halpaska, go ahead.
No, I feel like I have customers talk to me daily. I'm probably the most accessible council person here. That is only a statement of fact, not necessarily meaning anything else by it. And I have more people, probably 90 to 10, that say, get some things fixed. So anything that's deferred is not getting it fixed. It's kicking the can down the road. We have a responsibility to the citizenry to maintain and repair things that we have that responsibility for. Yes, we should do so in a reasonable manner. 2-3 cents isn't going to make the difference, but getting things fixed does. I don't want to defer any maintenance. If you want to keep it at the same rate it is, well, then we just defer everything because it's non-critical until it gets to be critical. And then it falls in somebody else's lap somewhere down the road. Well, that's a good way of doing it, and that's what happened to us, and that's what will happen to those in the future. I prefer not to do that, and let's take care of it now. And we have a good plan. I could go with Paul with 58. I'd rather see 59 like Councilman Alvarez is suggesting. It's not that much, but it allows us a little more freedom to start addressing the problems we haven't been addressing as well as perhaps we should have.
Not to interrupt anyone, the extra $3 million is a significant leverage, and I understand, Mr. Bognar, you're talking about, at the time we made the decision of $4 million, of course, that CIP list has, how much? 200-300 million, whatever, it's huge. And then it jumped to 7 as a result of estimated growth, the ability to leverage that more. So I'm reluctant to do that because we're taking that tiny bit off, but we're losing $3 million worth of capital project.
You're leaving your tax rate, your debt service side flat and can issue $7 million, which
Right.
it brings up some projects sooner.
Yeah, I know you
And,
do.
I understand it.
So, yeah.
I know you do.
I'm just trying to find relief and still get the projects or the new programs implemented that we want to get done.
And the new programs are in there, Mr. Balknight?
Yes.
The street program, we did not touch that. We did not touch any
Right.
recommended on the pay program. The only thing we did was reduce the street sweeping from the $640 to the $320. And the $320 amount should be close to what, if we were doing it in-house on a good system accurately, and efficiently is the word I want to look at. That's about what it would be, so.
And I would make that point, further bolster that. Mr. Halapaski, you go next. And Mr. Bognight made this point. There is a tax increase here, there's no doubt, assuming we adopt that. But what is it going for? $1 million for year one of a 10-year residential street program. Then PD and fire step pay program, and then our pay for performance. Now, under Mr. Hagan's idea of an effective tax rate, that is no to the residential street program, no to the step program for the police department. You know, that's a choice we all get to make. So let's make it very clear. That tax increase, and there's no denying it, what it ends up being is for that new stuff. It's very specific as to where it's going. Now, do we need to resolve the issue of the 4 versus 7? Or no? Okay. Mr. Halapaski.
And at the last council meeting that I attended, I just made a proposal that we might even consider going to the past rollback rate. The reason I made that suggestion is I do believe the citizens want us to get things fixed, get things done, not just keep kicking it down the road. And I would like to test that by going to the rollback rate, and let's see if the voters would approve it. They approved a huge bond issue for the schools because they perceived that it needed to be done. I believe they need these things to be done. And I'm not afraid to let's go back to the past the rollback rate and let's test that. And I believe you'd find out over 62%, like in the bond issue, approved it.
But, Mr. Halapaski, in this that they've proposed, no maintenance is deferred. There's nothing deferred in this that you're speaking of.
When we go to the effective rate, it would be.
But the 5.8 that's proposed here, there's nothing deferred.
And that's, like I said, I
And
could
same
go
with
with
that
it. I'm trying to see
.5728,
if
there's no
there's
maintenance deferred or anything like that. Everything that they proposed for cuts.
The debt, it's the CIP list, that's $3 million less for that.
Yes.
That's probably,
That's what I'm talking about. That need will still be there.
But
And so
going to
I will
the
grant that
points-
it isn't deferred literally, but yes, it still is. That project still needs to get done.
Well, there's 300 million there that you.
Well, then let's do none of them.
It ends up actually being how much million, when you leverage the 3 million on debt, it's what, 30 million? What is the 3 million to debt? If we, for 3 million on the debt service side, that really buys us how much money in the bond market? It's not just 3 million.
Oh, okay. It's like, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Yeah.
He was still adjusting his
Yeah,
glasses.
like, okay. We'll go, how much I'm still trying to get my arms around it.
Yeah.
We're going from 4 to 7, that's $3 million in extra cash flow for another, and that's what, I'm maybe not.
But it's for the same debt rate. And I'm
Yes,
sorry,
absolutely. Okay,
I
yeah.
probably didn't ask it correctly, I'm
your
sorry.
tax-
It's
yeah.
just, it's the same tax rate.
If you don't issue $3 million, and make sure, even though maybe you didn't answer this, but just that you're dropping your tax rate about .072 to down 24 some change. If you issue the extra money, which is right now, like I said, it's an estimate of $3 million, you keep your tax rate at 2506, and you get to use that $3 million on CIP, which you're pushing up projects. So that's where you're at, really, basically.
Quite frankly, I'm not sure how, I think we'd rather see the $7 million of projects being done, and if council strongly feels that we need to drop that .0072, let us find it on the M&O side, because we are so far behind on our projects, and, you know, it's just additional projects we can get done, so.
Maybe I
get
didn't
a
follow the
consensus on
thought
the-
there.
Huh?
I'm sorry if I wasn't following you.
No, I probably didn't say.
I like a
it,
deer in
but
the headlight.
you're okay.
why don't we just get a consensus on that right now as far as the .2506 debt side, which would leave it at 7. Now, and Mr. Bognight's would drop it .0072, which would end up, you got the math?
2434.
.2434, okay.
The only point being is that when we did the CIP, we were all okay with the 4 million.
Well, and at that.
Or that's
Thanks,
what we had
James.
available.
But at that time, you didn't realize that that tax rate would get you that 7 million because of the valuations going up.
Everybody's correct.
Yeah,
That's
we
it's up
are.
to-
Let me make one, I'm sorry, Mrs. Solis, I'm being a number guy, I'm qualify something. These are just estimates, folks, you know that. Yeah, 7 might become 6, it might become 5, so as long as you realize this, okay?
Ms. Solis, did you have a question, and Mr.
Yes,
Alvarez?
you said that we could work with M&O, both of y'all said, instead of and leaving the debt service at 2506?
Well, that's what we've been doing is the M&O side
It's just
all
the M&O,
along.
right.
That's all we've been doing.
I think that's the discussion we'll go, Ms. Garrett would suggest, you just leave it there, and just work on the M&O
Anything
side.
else in the M&O that
Hold on. There might be, just, everybody, we've got multiple decisions circulating. We need to find one and answer it and get a consensus. If I may, I suggest on the debt side, we get a consensus on that. It's a very good point Mr. Bachnight brought up. On the left, Mr. Alvarez, you had some discussion?
Well, let's just deal with the debt, 2506.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for. You want to leave it?
Yes.
I prefer to leave it myself. You guys?
I prefer to leave it.
There's two over
I
there.
don't feel comfortable.
Ms. Solis, you prefer to leave
I
it?
prefer to leave the and just
I
mess
feel
with
like we
M&O.
would be just delaying things that need to be done.
Good discussion, good point, excellent. Anyone else? Mr. Hagan, I know where you are on this. Okay, but it sounds like the consensus is to leave it alone, so let's move past that issue. And I had a thought about moving forward, but does anyone else want to? I have it.
And all I was trying to gauge is was there any support for perhaps going to a rollback rate? Do I have any support at all? All I hear is crickets. Guess not.
Okay, I would suggest that, now, keeping in mind that there's 241,337 above the 25% in general fund, that is available to some extent. We would still be abiding by our policy. If we look at the cuts that were suggested, which cuts can we agree to? And I wanted to start with F, if you look at the items there. You know, the pool is the first thing on there. Now, we had to close it this year. And that's for 6 weeks of operations next year is $56,000. And it looks like, because of the problems we had this year, et cetera, we could go ahead and plan not to open it next year. I know that's unfortunate, but we could also perhaps work with the YMCA to make their pool available to the public next year. And then I believe our Parks Department is really interested in speeding up the creation of a splash pad over there in that same area. Now, that won't be there for next year, but perhaps in the 2016. So do y'all agree with that pool cut? I know it's kind of tough, but I think we're going to face it
I think it
again.
reflects reality.
I don't agree with it.
You don't agree with it?
We don't
Okay.
know yet.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, go ahead.
No, given that I don't want to raise the tax rate, I'd say I support all these cuts and some additional ones that aren't on here.
Okay. Okay, so the pool, I would say this too, Mr. Alvarez, that, you know, if we have a wonderful year in sales tax, maybe it could happen, you know, if something changes between now and then. But based on information now, it's a recommended cut. Agreed? I think we
I
have.
agree.
Whatever
I
the
mean, you have a lot.
consensus is.
Okay,
Well, you have believe you have a lifeguard problem, and you have a plumbing problem, pump problem. We're losing 5 inches of water. As bad as it is this year and last year, it'll be worse next year.
okay. That's true.
If you take the total attendance and divide it by the total cost, you'd be surprised at how much number per individual it costs us to run it.
10,000 a week, almost. I mean.
For how
it
many
just-
kids?
Yeah, a lot, but
You
it's
know,
unfortunate.
Pay for them all to have wide
It's just-
memberships.
It's an unfortunate situation.
Send them to Schlitterbahn, it'd be cheaper.
I think, well, that pool is
Not
packed.
quite.
That's one of the reasons we
Not
can't
quite.
get lifeguards. I don't know if you've been over there. I mean, it is jam-packed.
I'm
But
being facetious,
we're getting
obviously.
we're getting in the weeds. Let's move off of that then. So the ambassadors program is easy because those two positions are not filled right now. We'll just eliminate them. I can't imagine anybody have any. And then the library subscriptions, professional services, and books. Okay, so we would agree to all those items.
I can't support the library reduction.
Okay. Now, keep in mind, there's 241,000 up here that perhaps, if Mr. Alvarez wants to, there's a couple of these we can put back, we can, okay? Right now, the consensus is all those, but we still can put them back. This is not a final thing tonight. The reduced general administration expenditures on D, the city manager, that's your office, Ms. Garrett. And the one thing, for example, the not televising the planning in parks, I really dislike that. I really would like to keep those two televised. I don't know what you guys think. You know, that's 10,350. I would like to see out of that 241, perhaps we keep that the way it is. Don't anyone talk
I
at
agree.
once?
I agree with you, Mayor.
Okay.
To me, it goes to letting the people know how these decisions are made, and I think televising them is an important part of that.
Transparency. Okay, you know, and perhaps I'm pushing on these decisions. These are not necessarily set in stone. Perhaps on the 5th, we could, I don't know, am I delaying it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, thank you.
And let me explain that, because what you decide tonight, we're going to go back and create that really thick budget book we give you on the 5th
Okay.
that has these decision points in here. Now, when you get ready to vote on it, if you want to make changes at the voting time, that would be great. But
Then,
Okay.
we need to get that
Mayor,
moving.
can I suggest we just get to a tax rate?
I'd love
Because
to.
this is not gonna, this is just in the weeds, I think,
And
my opinion.
I'll have to agree with him. It looks like the two numbers bantied around so far look like that 58 and something above it, like 59. And perhaps we should see if we have any support on either of those. And I'll be right up front with you. I'll go with your 58. I'd like to see more.
Okay, 58.
Like 5.7?
Unless you want to go 5.9.
No, I could go 5.8. I can go 5.8.
5.8.
You know mine.
I can go 5.8.
So we have enough consensus to print a budget at 5.8. I do think that, I personally, a few of these things, the televising of the planning meetings and parks meetings, and the zoo gives me a little anxiety. I'd like to kind of keep them at their same funding. Can you fit that in, Mr. Reyna? Can you,
We can make it work. I got $241,000 to work with on this assumption.
now, can we put those back? And now, again, they can be amended if y'all want to argue about them.
You want to finish going down your list? Because I think you
can.
had a good, I mean, we're
Okay.
down to, well, we're over to the,
Library,
well, they agreed, no, they agreed to
35.
cut.
Well, I was looking at the library professional services line item there.
I think there was a consensus to
That
cut
yes?
it.
Everything in F.
No?
Everything in F got cut.
Yes, okay, I was back, okay. I didn't-
In D, I personally would like to see the televising of the meetings stay.
We added that back.
Is that agreeable? Do we have enough for people?
I got that one
Yes.
back.
Okay, so we'll leave that in. The, on G, on the third page, these are non-departmental expenditures. I know Mr. Alvarez wanted that 2875. I tend to agree. That's such as, I hate to use the word immaterial, but,
Fine.
okay. You can make that, is Mr. Alvarez agreeable?
To what?
Your
I-69.
I-69.
To
Add
cut
it back in.
Oh, add it back
Leave
in.
it. You wanted to leave that. I think
No,
that,
I could have supported cutting it, but either way.
We're
Whatever.
okay.
Okay, cut it too.
We need to know, I mean, I don't, again, I-60, what is it doing for us? Is it worth it? What's the benefit? Where are we going with it?
it's funding probably communication and lobbying efforts, that's not a good word, to the feds, probably to make all this happen. And
The intent of the coalition that has been around for years was to, when the decision points needed to be made on where I-69 would go and this, you know, what section would be done next, and there's this coalition all up and down 59 that formed so that we'd have a seat at the table. We dropped it for several years. 2 years ago, one of the county judges in one of the East Texas towns, I think Angelina County, asked that we rejoin this. We split the cost of the subscription between us and the county. So the county pays half and we pay half.
so
Pay
20,
half of 2875, or that's the half number?
No, that's the half number.
Okay.
So it's a little over 5,000.
Again, you know, given that that's out in the county, that the county ought to pick it up. That's just my opinion.
it comes in the city limits, yeah.
It does. Barely.
Would you like to go to the county
Leave
commissioners
leave
meeting
it
for us?
in, leave it in.
So
Okay,
that's a
we'll
no,
leave
okay.
it.
So we're adding it back in now. That brings us to the zoo, and I think I've heard enough around the table.
I personally would like to leave their funding as it was last year and leave that back in there. Y'all, how do y'all feel?
The 25?
Yes.
Well, they've never seen an increase, is that correct?
Yes, they have.
They
They
have?
haven't the
Well,
last,
no, well-
not in the last several years. We've been at 150. They did ask for an increase last year to 200. We stayed at the 150 level. So it's been numerous years they've been at 150. I don't know if.
There've been several years, like you're correct, several years have been at 125.
Yeah.
And the past 4 or 5 years, I would say it's been 150.
150.
I just think it's important.
I'd like to
part of
leave
the
it at
park.
150. I sure hate to cut them.
Absolutely.
Did we cover everything on here then, didn't we?
And now, go ahead.
I'm sorry, my assumption is y'all are okay with us moving the PD MDTs up to this year,
This
which
year,
the.
yeah.
I think it's a good idea.
The chief will bring back a contract resolution on the 19th of August for us to move forward on that. So, and that, you're seeing the differences there, so.
And
Okay, can I make a suggestion? Out of the 240,000, where we've got roughly $37,000 that we spent, can we leave the rest in there, and hopefully somehow we can have some magic done and get our splash pad earlier than, and just quit trying to cut some more, add things back, just leave that money there and try and get the splash pad? Because one of the things that I was talking to somebody about was, we need to take a look at, there would be a possibility of an increase in crime in that part of town if the kids don't have something to do. So we need to really concentrate on trying to get that park or that recreational area back up as soon as possible.
We need to have some really good sales tax months in the first quarter of next year.
Or
Never
we can
know.
go back up to that 59.
You're out of order, Mr.
Okay.
Halapesky? No, I'm kidding. We certainly could. You are
No
absolutely
Bucks, no
correct.
Buck Rogers.
Well, again, we will vote on a tax rate in a month or so and vote on a budget. This is not the end of the decision. It's a great place to just start. And assuming that is ultimately adopted, it represents somewhat of a tax increase. We fully know that. But it's very clear what it's for. Very clear, residential streets and the STEP program for the police department and then our pay for performance. So it's very critical that people understand that's where that money's going.
Did we have a consensus on doing the quiet zone study for next year so we can put that in the budget?
Yeah,
At
yes, ma'am.
20,000?
I would be supportive of it. I think it's a perennial problem that perhaps this would hold an answer. It's not a large deal of money, but maybe it could give us some answers, or at least partial answers.
There's some
That's been one of the biggest gripes of the citizenry for as long as I've been here.
20 years. Trust
Oh,
me.
yeah,
And
longer than I've been here.
The
My
interesting
life.
thing, going forward, we hope we'll be closing some more crossings as TxDOT requires us to whenever we want to make a new crossing. And then there is some new technologies out there, so yeah.
Mayor, may I?
Please
Just for the
do.
record, I always want to go real quick, go real quick, okay? Just for the record. We're going to propose a 58 cents overall tax rate.
Yes.
With that said, I'm focusing on the next page, is that we're going to go ahead and cut the city manager professional services. We're going to leave in the public information money. We're going to reduce all the items from parks and library, as we suggested. And then we're going to leave in the non-departmental expenditures, the I-69 and the Texas Zoo. And when it's okay with y'all to go ahead and just move money, go ahead and speed up the purchase of the MDTs and video. My suggestion on that, other than a budget amendment, is that, as you aware or know, Mr. Craig has some available funds, current budget. I was going to just use that money without, just kind of speeds it up. Because if you go to a budget amendment, you're going to have so many days to do it. So this will speed it up a little faster to go ahead and get the purchase acquired, get the cars loaded, and make a move on. Is that okay with y'all? And last thing I'm going to add, $20,000 for the quiet zone study. That's good?
Okay.
The rest.
And then we get to talk about it for another whole 6 weeks.
And yeah, but at least we went from here to here,
Right.
Yeah.
which makes us very, very happy.
That's everything you have.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to thank all of y'all. It's a really good discussion, and it's important. And so I really appreciate that. Mr. Alvarez?
In my calculation, the way I'm looking at this, when you take that tax rate and you take out the amount that's dedicated for the debt, what's left basically pays for one or two, maybe two of our departments, police and/or fire, pick one. So we're using a lot of other sources to carry the rest of our budget. And we've heard a lot of conversation about unfilled positions, and one of the things that, again, a lot of them are in the Public Works Department. Is that correct? Those are paid through the enterprise fund, not through the tax rate. So, the argument about the sandbagging of the tax rate is not a valid argument, because Public Works is separate, and those employees that sit in that department are paid through enterprise, through the water bill and so forth, not the tax rate. So that's that's what I think our critical area is for as employees are concerned. My understanding also, we've whittled down the police department down to less than 5.
I think they may
openings.
be at 5 today or 6. Jesse's saying 5, yeah, so 5.
So, I mean, we are bringing down that number significantly. So you might want to look at that when you're processing all of this, the budget and where the monies are coming from, because the tax rate is just a very small part of the overall budget. Thank you.
As of yesterday, we had 23 vacancies in the general fund departments, so we are working hard to fill our vacancies.
But you're right, Mr. Rose, it's a daily deal. I'll go back and look at those numbers, make sure they're reflecting what they should be.
And your total sales tax, including the half-cent corporation, would be 26 million, if you included the half-cent in there. So my point of that is, compare that to 14 or 15 million in property tax. Sales tax collects considerable more towards everything we do. I've always point that out to folks that, we some people focus so much attention on it. Not that it's not important, but it's not near as much as our sales tax portion. So, anyway, very good. Mr. Raines.
I don't know if Ms. Garrett still wants to go through I got a budget calendar.
I forgot all about that. I was so happy.
That's why I'm here.
We also, Lynn did his street sweeping analysis. What are you handing out?
I was going to do something real quick.
If y'all still want to talk about the street sweeping program, Mr. Balknight asked it the last time.
It's early.
And so.
What I'm just handing out
is just a
refresher of what we're looking at on the budget calendar. I'm not going to take too much time with this, and just get up here.
It's the same dates that you've been given all summer long. The dates have not changed, just one of the hearings. The votes have changed, one of the votes.
It's just some key points there, and if you flip to September is where I want to focus on September 11th, really. That's I call it my trigger point, where I want to try to get ahead of the odds. I'm moving forward with the bond sale, yes or no. So once I get that out of the head, approval, then I'm going in the market. So once I pull that trigger, I can't reverse it. Well, I could reverse it, but it would be a very negative impact on us. I just want to make sure you understand that. So on September 11th, I'm going to come back after we do our regular hearings and meetings and votes. We're still moving forward with that, and hopefully I get a nod of the head and I move on. I just want to give you a calendar. This is where we're at right now.
And then Lynn did do the analysis that Mr. Balknight asked for on the in-house and outhouse outsource. Just making sure y'all are paying attention. So whether we do it in or out, the analysis on that. Now, whether you want Lynn to go through it or y'all want to just look at it and talk about it later, it's up to you guys. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gilbert. Good job.
Does council like to read this on their own and ask questions later, or do y'all want to? It's a lot of numbers.
It is a lot of numbers. Just real briefly, just a kind of overview. What you've got here is a comparison, a spreadsheet that compares, gives you really a 5-year look. We went ahead and showed the 6-year because it kind of starts over at year 6, but a 5-year look at the cost of a in-house program that uses 3 personnel and 3 sweepers, 2 that would be used to sweep residential streets during the day, and 1 that would be used to sweep thoroughfares at night. That comparison against an outsourced program that we feel, based on the amount of curb miles we were doing there, is a same proportion. The curb miles that are on here right now at this reduced at this $320,000 level We think we'll get state highways every month, so every 4 weeks for state highways, thoroughfares every 8 weeks, and residential streets every 12 weeks. You can see here that in year one, you've got the upfront capital cost of replacing all 3 of our current sweepers, because they are out of life cycle and certainly won't stand up to the rigors of running this program. And when you go out 5 years and compare these, you can see that the cost of outsourcing is really a little bit less than the cost of doing it in-house. 1.9 over 5 years to do it, an in-house sweeping program, $1.6 million for a similar sized outsourced project.
And there's no doubt the outsourced prod is going to give us a better product than what we're able to do right now in-house.
No doubt about that.
Did you do this spreadsheet?
Gilbert and I worked together on this.
Very good. I'm impressed. Very good. So, yeah, we'll get a better product and a lower price, is what you're supporting with this document. So, any questions, Council?
No, I'll keep reviewing it, and I'll call you Mr. Short if I have any questions, but thank you for putting this together, exactly what I wanted to see.
Certainly.
Very good. Anything else?
Brandon, thank you.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
You gonna leave it?